Thanks so much for coming. And what I'd like to do this evening is to just kind of set the stage a bit for what we're calling the Diocesan Pastoral Plan. And so our faith is not just about me and God. It's about me and God and us as the community of faith. And so our parishes are places where we put that faith into practice. Part of my responsibility as caring for the parish, for the diocese, is to entrust the care of parishes into the care of pastors. And so that's really what it is that we're kind of coming around to in talking about the Diocesan Pastoral Plan. How do we make sure that we're providing in the very best possible way for the pastoral care of our people? And so what I've learned over the last few years is that here in our diocese, we're facing a bit of a challenge. It's not a challenge that many other places aren't also facing. We're not alone in facing this challenge, but we're facing it. We're not as serious about facing this challenge as some places are, and we're not as well off as some places are. We're a relatively small diocese of 59 parishes, and we have, at present, 54 active priests. Thank goodness we have priests that are still ministering beyond the age of retirement, as Father O'Leary is, and a couple of our other priests. But when priests reach the age of 70, they're able to retire if they choose to retire at that time. Most choose to stay on beyond the age of 70 for a period of time. But at some point, as all of us, we recognize I can't be doing the things that I used to do, and retirement comes into the picture. So our clergy are aging, and that's, again, typical of dioceses throughout the country. And our vocations are not keeping up with the number of retirements. In addition to that, you always have unplanned things that happen. People get sick. People run into some problems. There are difficulties of some sort. And so this is where we find ourselves, and where it became, to me, very, very clear. It's been getting clearer over the last couple of years, but it became very clear this last time around of priestly assignments. You may recall that we had no ordinations to the priesthood last year. Thanks be to God, we will ordain 4 young men this spring as priests. And thanks be to God, we will ordain 2 young men as deacons. Last year we didn't ordain priests or deacons. And no, we ordained deacons, or we wouldn't be ordaining priests this year. So our ordinations, our vocations are not keeping up with the retirements and the illnesses. And so our numbers are dwindling. We can't just keep saying to pastors, well, you're just going to have to do more with the little that we have, with our limited resources. So it became clear that we had to look at perhaps another way of doing things. And so one of the things that Monsignor Osborne, whom I'm sure you all know, Monsignor Osborne is a priest in the Diocese of Kalamazoo, almost 25 years. Has spent a number of his years in service to the larger church in Rome, and he just returned from his most recent service to the larger church in Rome this past summer. and I appointed him to be the Vicar General of the diocese, and the moderator of the Curia, and the Director of Vocations. So he's making up for lost time of having been grown. So Monsignor Osborne is one of our presenters this evening. Father Bob Cragen, whom I'm sure you all know, is, and you're a priest how many years, Bob?
27.
27 years, and the pastor of St. Catherine's in Portage, but also the vicar for clergy for the diocese. In other words, he's my delegate to all of the priests and deacons. And so between the two of them, Monsignor Osborne and Father Cragen and myself, we've been looking at developing this particular plan. We began, first of all, by saying, well, let's look at the data. Let's look at what are the numbers. And when we look at our numbers, our statistics, and we compare them to the statistics of other dioceses or nationally, we find out, well, we're facing the same issues that many other people are. We also find out that our ratio, I mentioned we have 59 parishes, 110,000 Catholics, 54 active priests. If you divide that up, it should come out to somewhere around one priest per 1,900 people. That's about the national average. But right now, the way our priests are distributed, and because our parishes vary in size, we have St. Catherine's with 2,400 families or so, and you have some parishes in some of the more rural parts of the diocese where perhaps there are 250 families. It still requires a priest. So the problem has not been so much our lack of numbers as much as the way we've distributed them. So one of the things that we're going to be talking with you about is this plan that says maybe we need to think about how we have our priests and where they're serving and how we're going to have to be able to distribute them. And it's an issue that really can't wait for another time around. So we began talking about this in earnest right after the spring assignments, when it was almost, we weren't quite able to get everybody where they needed to go, places that needed them to have somebody to go. And so we began to having these discussions back in the middle of the summer. I met over the summer with all of the priests in the various deaneries to begin the discussions. We had a very, very good dialogue with all of the priests during the time of our October convocation. And it was at that point that the plan began to come together in some seed forms. And so we started working on it from that point on. I've met with all of the priests 3 different times since then. We've met with various consultative bodies of the diocese, the Pastoral Council, the Priest Council, and our seminarians. We've shared with them all of this information. And so what we've come up with is that in some parts of the diocese, we're going to probably group some parishes together in what are going to be called collaboratives. It's just a word that means several parishes will be collaborating. Remember, a couple of years ago, we started talking about wouldn't it be good for parishes to enter into partnerships with one another. And we encouraged that, and some parishes did that, and most parishes said, well, yeah, that's nice, but we don't really need to do that right now. And there was an idea that kind of came and went. This is a little bit built on the partnerships, except that the parishes will be grouped as a collaborative. every parish maintains its own individuality. No parish is being closed. There is no intention, no plan to close any parish. The importance of the parish I find to be incredibly important. That's where our faith is lived out. And so we want very much to keep protecting, whether it's a small parish in the rural parts of the diocese or a big, large parish. That's where wonderful things happen. But we may not be able to have a resident pastor for every one of those parishes. Those parishes may be grouped together in a grouping called collaboratives that may have just one pastor that will rotate around to them. And still have the help and assistance of other priests that will be there as parochial vicars or as chaplains.